Herzlich willkommen zum literarischen Frühstück von Common Ground. Mein Name ist Tino Schlench und ich bin Buchblogger aus Wien. Ich freue mich ganz besonders, im Rahmen dieser digitalen Veranstaltungsreihe die nordmazedonische Schriftstellerin und Übersetzerin Lidija Dimkovska begrüßen zu dürfen, die uns aus Ljubljana zugeschaltet ist. Wir werden uns im Folgenden über ihre vielfältige literarische Arbeit, ihr Leben zwischen verschiedenen Ländern, Sprachen und Kulturen und über ihren Lyrikband Schwarz auf Weiß unterhalten, der im vergangenen Jahr in der Übersetzung von Alexander Sitzmann in der Parasitenpresse erschienen ist. Das Gespräch werden wir auf Englisch führen. Welcome, Lidija Dimkovska. I'm very happy to have you here. So this digital format is called Literary Breakfast. What does a perfect breakfast or perfect morning in the life of Lidija Dimkovska look like?
Good morning. Turkish coffee made my husband, who always drinks a macchiato, reading a Slovenian newspaper that daily comes to our door, and some Macedonian news on internet. That is my morning. The breakfast happens a bit later, and after that my work starts.
Your life and academic career has led you to several countries. You were born in Skopje, where you studied comparative literature, then moved to Bucharest to obtain a PhD in Romanian literature, and now you live in Slovenia. In an interview I found online, you were asked if you could ever imagine moving back to Skopje, and you gave a very interesting answer. So let me read this. I live in Slovenia, but at the same time, in a way, I live in Macedonia too, and even in Romania, where I lived for several years. Could you elaborate on this?
Yes, even if I physically actually live only in Slovenia, in Ljubljana, I feel that I live also everywhere in the places I'm strongly connected to it, like Skopje or Bucharest, but also the places I used to visit or to stay in. In a way, I miss all the places in the world, maybe because by nature and by statement, I consider myself as a cosmopolitan person, and the entire world is my home, even if sometimes I feel that I don't have any actually. It is probably the destiny of all immigrants, at least immigrants writers.
How does your life in between countries and cultures affect your work as an author?
In many ways, it enriches it, but also complicates my work and my life. When I used to live only in Macedonia, I never asked myself actually who am I, if I am at home or not, or about my language, my identity, my country. Everything was very obvious and simple. But when I moved and experienced the life of a migrant, and especially the writer migrant who depends on the language, many things became essential for me. Questions like the question of language, the question of home, of identity, the belonging, the question of national literature. So all these topics in a way enter my literature, and they become even now topics in different ways of my writing.
You speak several languages. Macedonian, of course, Romanian, Slovenian, English, probably even more. Do you write your texts exclusively in Macedonian, or did you ever think of switching things up? Did you ever experiment with other languages?
I write poetry and prose only in Macedonian. Essays or other texts I can write also in other languages, but prose and poetry I write only in Macedonian. Actually, I decided to write only in Macedonian. It is my mother tongue, my own room, my fatherland, my motherland. Actually, it is the language of my childhood, of my memories, the language I became a writer in. It is also a political decision, as I can say. Why? Because if we, whose mother tongue is the Macedonian language, don't write in it, so who else can do it? Macedonia is a very small country with big problems. One of the biggest problems was the problem with Greece, with the name of our country. So we made a big compromise, and now we are North Macedonia. But also there is a problem sometimes with the official Bulgarian state that pretends the problem with the language. And so far I have 3 books actually translated in the Bulgarian language. I think that in this century, such nationalistic things absolutely must be forgotten, but they are not. So my answer to them, and also my own feeling, is my choice to write only in Macedonian language.
Being a Macedonian writer living in Slovenia, is there something like a Macedonian-speaking literary scene or community in Slovenia? Can you tell us something about the literary life in Ljubljana?
Being a Macedonian writing in Slovenia is a very strange position. At the same time, I'm a writer who lives in Slovenia for almost 20 years. So in a way, I belong to the Slovenian community. But because I write in other language than the Slovenian, so I write in Macedonian, I'm at the same time a foreign writer, like any other foreign writer. So I'm never totally Slovenian and never totally foreign writer, and it is a quite complicated position in the life because I'm in between, in a way. But of course, I participate in the literary life of Slovenia. For several years, I was the president of the jury for the Vilenica International Literary Prize. I also promote and research the immigrant and minority writing in Slovenia. And on 21st of March, the International Day of Poetry, I received even a prize in Slovenia for my poetry. It is called The Glass of Immortality, and it is dedicated actually to Slovenian poets for their 10 years poetry work. And it is the first time that one writer who doesn't write in Slovenian got it. So it is a big honor for me, and in a way it shows me that I belong also to the Slovenian literature. Actually, for me, national literatures are a very stupid thing, because I don't really believe that in 21st century, the century of migrations, of nomadism, of so many people who don't live anymore in their home countries, in their homes also, we can speak about national literature. So I think that it is time to speak only about international literature.
You are also an in-between when it comes to literary genres, being an author of prose and poetry. Can you tell us something about the relationship between these art forms in your work? And at what point do you even decide whether to approach a topic or theme in one way or the other?
Yes, I think that actually the topics decide themselves if I can write poetry or prose. Writing poetry is much more a spontaneous thing, I think, because the poetry comes like a wind, like an inspiration, like a perception or lucidity or opinion, and I can immediately write these verses or the idea or to develop an entire poem. But the ideas in prose, they also come like a poetry, but if I want to write a novel or short story, actually I have to find time and place to do that. So to dedicate my time to prose writing. Prose writing is much more physical task, I think, than a psychological one.
Your latest publication in German is the poetry collection in black and white, Schwarz auf Weiß. Can you tell us how this collection came together? The collection touches on many topics: belonging, love, traveling, for example. Lots of poems deal with dark themes, though. Death and dying play an important role. The first poem is called My Grave, Mein Grab. Another one is called Death Poem, Todesgedicht. And yet, your poems do not paint everything in black and white. There is, in my opinion, always a moment of ambiguity, maybe even hope. Could you reflect on the relationship between black and white, between light and darkness in your work?
So, in black and white is an idiom. It means to write the things on a paper as a document, as a proof that something really happened. So, in my poetry collection in black and white, in a way that is wonderfully translated in German by Alexandra Zitzman, there are poems which are for me a kind of poetical document of my life, of the time I live in, also the big space I live in, I mean the entire world. And the poems in a way are also kind of political statement to many things I'm concerning about. The topics of migration, the topics of alienation, of belonging, also of love, of death. A lot of poetry about that is in this collection. So they are very personal answers to the questions of our time, I think.
Thank you so much, Lidija Dimkovska, for having a literary breakfast with us. We don't want to say goodbye without listening to one of your poems, though. So prior to this interview, I was asking you to choose one to read to us, and I'm very much looking forward to it.
Now I'm going to read a poem, the shortest poem from the collection in black and white. I'm going to read it in Macedonian, just to feel the language I write in. It is the poem Without Me, or Bez mene. Како автоматска врата на воз се затвори мојот живот. На перонот останаа непознати луѓе, но секој знаеше кому му мафта. Во вагоните, куфери, врева, патници со нозе врз седиштата. И едно резервирано до прозорецот, што сите го меркаа од ходникот. Во далечина трчаше старица во црно, премалено паѓајки во тревата, но возот не го стигна. Ја повлеков црвената сопирачка, врз мене се струполи кондуктерот. Ја потурна вратата и скокнав, возот писна низ прозорците се надвисна сенка. Старицата во црно никаде ја немаше, а мојот живот без мене замина. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Lidija Dimkovska. Vielen Dank. Und auch Ihnen vielen Dank für Ihr Interesse. Einen sehr schönen Tag.
Mamma mia floreressa, se spale di diminuazza, vende flori le per piazza, vende flori le per piazze.